Welcome back to AM Ocala Live. Tom, Joe, and of course the backbone of the whole operation, Robin, in studio. Mm-hmm. And Robin, we have a special guest online with us.
Can't hear you guys.
He is absolutely amazing. His name is David Crow. He spent his early years on the Navajo Indian Reservation in Arizona and in New Mexico. He is a survivor of childhood abuse. David is a successful lobbyist in Washington. He's a sought-after speaker. He is a mentor to college interns, and he provides pro bono service for Save the Children, which is a charitable organization. David also participated in the Big Brothers Big Sisters program, and he is very generous about his talent. 10% of his book royalties are going to Barrett House. It is a homeless shelter for women in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He's written a wonderful book called The Pale-Faced Lie. It is a true story, his memoir.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on.
This memoir you've written? It's such a painful story. What was it? Was this a form of catharsis? Was it cathartic for you to put this pen to paper?
It was, and what I want my listener and reader to know is that it's not a sad story in the sense I wrote a story to be sad and make people feel sorry for me. Not at all. There's a message of inspiration here. So by the time I was 10 years old, so many traumatic things had happened that I never told anybody, not my wife, not my children, for 42 more years. And even then, not until I wrote it all down and confronted some extraordinarily difficult things, and then I worked through a process of forgiving the people who'd done it to me, starting with my father. And then it wound up letting me forgive myself, because I carried so much guilt and shame. And I think people who've been through this kind of experience somehow think they deserve it, somehow think they can't rise above it. And my biggest regret in life is that it took me 42 years to confront it, and then another 12, I'm almost 67, to actually get a book. Because what I wish I had done differently was made this step about 30 years earlier. Somehow I couldn't, but there's a message there. I think the book ends on a very up and hopeful note, and I hope that's what my reader will get out of the book. People know my story, and I came from a household that had a mother that anything near her, if she got angry at you, anything near her, you got struck with. That was just how it was, and it didn't take anything to anger. You leave one thing, you leave your shoe out of place in your clean bedroom, and you could get hit with something. So I've lived a little bit of what you talk about in this book. How was it that it brought you to finally confront this issue and deal with the pain and agony of what you had been holding in for so long? What was it that finally was the catalyst that got you to confront it? That's a great question. And first, I'm sorry for what you went through. I have a sense of what that's about. What made me finally do it is that throughout my adult lifetime, I had good relationships, I had a successful life, but I had a huge chunk of me that I wouldn't share with anybody, and not even really myself. And so there was an aloofness and a distance from people. If people got too close or told me too much about themselves, there was the expectation that I needed to do the same, and I couldn't. I was ashamed and I was embarrassed. And so it really closed off a huge world of human relations that would have been invaluable to have. If you have a real relationship, you trust that person, they trust you, you know each other's strengths and weaknesses. I could never do that. And so when I went through this process, once I forgave those who did this to me, I started to forgive myself. And I began opening up like a flower on a spring day. And the benefits that came from that are almost not measurable. And even though I'm a long way into my life before I figured it out, at least I've got a few good years left. And my message to other people is, don't hide from this. Don't run from this. Face it. And you won't believe the blessings that will come. You won't even begin to understand them. That's really why I wrote the book.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask you, first of all, I'm glad you said you had a few years left, because I'm 67. I'm agreeing with you. I have a few years left. When you had that confrontation with these people, did you find yourself just shutting down and walking away, or how did you feel?
Well, that's another great question. So the first confrontation was with my father, and it was, are you sorry for what you did to my mother, to my sisters, to my brother, and me? His instantaneous response is, you're a coward. I never thought you'd be much of a man. You are not much of a man. I'm sick of your revisionist nonsense. You had it a lot better than me. You had it a lot better than you deserve. Go to hell. And then that was on a phone conversation. Called my mother, who was she had tremendous mental illness, but she blamed me for abandoning her when I was 10 years old, not taking care of her. And she became homeless, and she had a lot of issues that were very difficult. I called her and said, did it ever occur to you that you were the mother and that I was the child? Her instant response is, you were the oldest boy. You should have taken care of me. You should have been around. You're never around. You're not now. You have a lot to be responsible for. When I finished those two conversations, both by phone and both on the same day, I instantly understood it was always going to be my fault. I was always going to be in the wrong. If I let them decide, if they were the ones that were to tell me, define me, as they always had, I would be a loser, a coward. But at that instant, for some reason, I realized, oh, wait a minute. I am free of both of you and some other people in my life. I'm not the person who did this. You did this to me. But I didn't feel like a victim, but I no longer felt victimized. And I forgave them completely. Any interaction after that, no matter what they said, I just said, look, I don't care. I'm going to move forward. If you want to, fine. If you don't, fine. And it almost as if this whole thing happened to somebody else. And I'm not sure that would work that way for everybody. I mean, I read every self-help book. I went to therapy. Nothing worked until I faced the memories and then let the people who did it to me know what they had done. And then when their reaction came back, I realized there are no answers to this. Your answer is to get them out of your head.
It's very liberating when you come to that moment, because my seminal moment with that was when I told my mother that I don't want to be an abuser like you were. I want to break the cycle that you abused us. And then I confronted her about it. And her response was, you were a brat. You were not a good kid. And I was just doing the best that I could do with the tools that I had. And sometimes those tools needed to hit you because that's the only thing you understood. And I knew at that moment that she was never going to get that she abused me, that it was going to be my fault, and she was disciplining me the way parents thought they should, or she thought they should. And so I moved on from that. It was one of the most liberating moments of my life, and I think that that's probably what you're talking about as well.
Well, I'm stunned at how much of our experiences are not only similar, they're identical, because we had that same aha moment. Up until the moment of my two confrontations, it had always been my fault. I had allowed myself to be defined as a guy that was going along with a criminal, a guy who couldn't take care of a mentally ill mom. And why did it stay around that long? I don't know. But yes, I had the exact same aha moment. If you and I can get our readers and our listeners to face this much younger in their lives, I think we would both agree there are decades of our life where we were just kind of going through the motions, emotionally at least. And my only thought is, oh my God, why didn't I do this sooner?
Yeah, I did it at 31 years old and thought, why didn't I do this when I was 17, 18, 19 years old?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, you said,
well, throw in 30 extra years, and it took me that long. So God bless you for getting there 30, 31. I admire you, and think our listeners can be inspired by your story.
But you had to find a way for forgiveness to creep in. You had to forgive yourself, but you also had to forgive them.
And for me, I had to forgive them first. I mean, I didn't really have an understanding of this. I mean, I think I'm a smart enough guy. I read everything. I went back through past history, back to the Navajo Indian Reservation, back to the town of Gallup, New Mexico, Albuquerque, the places I had grown up. But what I never faced was just what was done to me, and perhaps more importantly, what it permanently did to me. When I left home, even though I was only 17, it stayed with me. Everything that I'd been through stayed with me. I was not free, and I would not be free for many, many decades. My greatest regret in life is that, because my children, my wife, my friends, they all suffered as a result of me not being a complete person, you know, a very guarded person, a very nervous person, anxious and guilt-ridden. It just wasn't the way you're supposed to live.
So this memoir, when I'm looking through the memoir, there's a time where your father, one of the abuses he did was he was trying to groom you to be the same criminal mind he was, correct?
Yes, and on the Navajo Indian Reservation, I was his lookout when he stole very expensive tools and fenced them. And he would tell me about the murders of the fellow convicts in San Quentin, murders that no one knew about because they were never caught. He would tell me about people he had killed before I was born. And he would explain to me, for instance, the Clutter family, farm family murders happened where the two convicts together did something much more cruel than they would have done apart. Truman Capote wrote a great book about it. And I was a paper boy, and I had read about it. This is before the movie, before the Capote book. But a lot of newspaper articles. And my dad explained to me how combinations of prisoners would get together and murder, how that worked, why they did it. And he talked to me like I was a San Quentin insider. And he would tell me, we killed a guy right over there. Where would we bury him? Where's the last car that came by? Show me where the last police station was. Give me the license tag of the last two cars that went by. And if I didn't answer right, he'd get very angry and hit me. And I learned that the best way for me to get through childhood with this guy was to agree with him, to go along, to be as clever as he was, and to make him think I was every bit as criminally crazy as he is. And I did that. And, of course, at some point you have to confront that. And then there's another point, I don't want to give anything away, where you're caught in a situation that can involve murder in you, and you've got some very tough decisions to make, and I had some. And I just hope my reader will think, even though I'm a deeply flawed person, I made the best decisions I could under extremely difficult circumstances and tried hard to do the right thing.
You had to have other people in your corner, though, rooting for you. I mean, gosh, when you left at 17, you still had a whole life ahead of you, whether that was college or not, but you had to have your own cheerleading section where you would be able to trust some people so you could get into college and formulate a career for yourself.
Well, you're absolutely right. So the plus side of my life, which is huge, great children, great wife, great friends, is that I cite 7 angels in my book who saved me. And there was a book party last night. My last 2 angels were there and co-hosted a party. My first angel was an 80-year-old Navajo woman, and I was 10 years old. And every day she would come over and comfort me. And she's the first adult that really loved me. She couldn't have children herself, but she was the best mom in the world. And she would tell me stories. Her grandmother was 4 years old and walked 260 miles from Fort Sumner, New Mexico during the Navajo Holocaust, known as the Long Walk, or in Navajo parlance, the fearing time. And she explained to me how the soldiers shot the old, the young, the pregnant, and the conditions. And she said, but it's all in God's plan, David. All in God's plan. You can be forgiven. You can forgive. You can have ajuba, the Navajo word for glory and openness. I mispronounced it for sure. But Evelyn taught me, even though I didn't absorb it fully, you can forgive. You can get through things you don't think you can get through. Then my next angel was a 60-year-old Navajo man who was a code talker, a hero of World War II. His children, the Kuntz children, are my friends today. He and Mrs. Kuntz taught me tough love. You do the right things, and we're going to reward you. Do the wrong things, you can't come over. And through life, these series of angels showed up again and again and again. And they tolerated all of my bad things because they saw some goodness. And they're the ones that got me through life. And they continue to get me through life.
Are you able to recognize when you're mentoring students, are you able to recognize that somebody might be going through something similar?
Yes, and I have a kid now who's going through a very difficult time, and the fact that she's a DACA kid, and I won't say more because it's a private thing between she and I.
That's cool.
And I made a commitment to her as her internship ended. I've had 260 college interns in my DC lobbying firm, DCLRS, me and my partners, and I made commitments to them to write letters of recommendation, to support them, to talk to them at any time, to counsel them. And yes, I recognize, and of my 260, many have had great parents. Several of them have been in very tough spots. And we always establish a personal relationship of trust where I let them know it'll be okay. You'll get through this. And I'll do all in my power to be one who helps you get through this. Very, very rewarding. And I love it. And I hope I get to do this for 25 more years and have 260 more kids.
Ah,
Wow.
that is outstanding. Your book, and you said you're on the Navajo Indian Reservation in Arizona and New Mexico, and New Mexico survivor. Are you Native American?
No, and I'm not going to give this away because
okay.
The book's called The Paleface Life for a reason.
Okay, all
I
right.
want my readers to get to the last page and go, oh.
Okay, here's a
that's why
teaser
he
and a
did
half.
this.
Okay, all right. That's good. That's good. Well, earlier you had mentioned, and it kind of struck me, I try to take notes when I have a guest on, and you said you let them make the decisions, and kind of like they made the decisions for you or for whoever was in their life, and then you made that decision not to let them make the decisions for you. Their decisions didn't matter anymore because you finally got old enough to say, hey, wait a minute. I don't really give a damn about what they think about me or whatever because I'm older now. I'm an adult. Am I hitting it pretty close?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you're reading my mind or you're a pale-faced liar whisperer, but there's a point in your life where I decided I don't want to be around people like my dad and my mom. I don't want to be a victim, and I don't want to be cruel, and I don't want to break every rule of civil society just to take what I want. I want to be around nice people with integrity and honor, and if I'm not like that, why would I be able to attract that? And the better person I think I became, the better people I attracted. One of life's real secrets. If you want to be around great people, be one yourself. If you want to have philanthropy in your life, give philanthropy when you can. And so, yes, making those decisions to break that cycle, to be a different human being, we can all do it. You don't have to be what you were raised to be, particularly if it's negative. You do not.
We're talking with David Crow. He has a book called The Paleface Lie, a true story. When you, as you're writing this and you're putting pen to paper, were there a myriad of emotions, happy emotions, agonizing emotions? Just did you go through the gamut of emotions as you were putting pen to paper doing this project?
Yeah, I think most of the paper was so tear-stained, and only my poor wife really knows what I went through. My kids, too, but her much more. I had an extremely difficult time with this. And there are times I would write things, I go back and read it and go, oh, my God, can I really tell people that? Well, if you're going to write a book about what you really went through and have a message, it has to be completely authentic and completely honest. And so the emotions I felt towards people I hurt, towards the people who hurt me, what had been done to my poor mother, my siblings, the people along the way, it was very, very difficult. I think the hardest part of writing this book was editing it so that it was honest, concise, in a good flow, and lets the reader know what you really went through. So yes, it was very difficult, but very cathartic when I was done. It had all the emotions you can have. And lots of times when I would just laugh out loud, I pulled the most outrageous pranks you can imagine.
And everybody looked at you and said, "What are you laughing at?"
Well, David, your
Well-
book, your book is very, very special. I mean, you really are talking to a lot of people. You are mentoring people through the writing of your book, and it's very courageous to do this and share your story. How can we get a copy of the book? Where can we order it? And do you have a personal website?
I do, and thank you for asking. You can order it off of Amazon or Barnes & Noble, and please go to my website, davidcrowauthor.com.
Yeah, that was hard to figure out, davidcrowauthor.com. I like that. I think he's one of the... Go ahead.
Oh, I'm a pretty simple guy. It was a straightforward. It's the only thing I can think of.
And it works. That's the whole...
I hope it works.
He made a decision.
Buy a million books, people.
Buy a million books. You know, if your book helps one person, though, the book's a success, correct?
Yeah, that's what my family says, and my two living angel mentors, they've all said the same thing. If just one person reads this book and walks away and does something immediately, not wait, no excuses, no hiding, face your problems, because everyone has them. Maybe mine and yours were more difficult than others, but everyone has a story. And I just want people to say, I don't care what your story is. I know that you may have gone through something you can't imagine. I couldn't even admit it to myself for 42 years after my 10th birthday. You can do this quicker, and you can do this better than I did. And I want all of you to do that. Live the best life you can live, and don't start any later than this moment.
All right, we had about a minute and a half to go. Boy, this time went by fast. One quick question, and make it brief, like I said. You're giving 10% of your book royalties to the Barnett House, a homeless shelter for women in New Mexico.
Yes.
Why did you? Why'd you choose that?
My mom was homeless in Albuquerque. She drove from our little town off the edge of the reservation. She was abandoned. Dad cut off all electricity, took her food. Rent ended that day. She had nowhere to go. She had a 9th grade education, probably really wasn't even that. No money, a broken down car. She had nothing. She drove to Albuquerque and parked her car in the street. A policeman found her, gave her a blanket. She remembered one man's name, Tom Collins, a philanthropist that she somehow remembered. Mm-hmm. She called every day. It took her a long time to reach Tom, and of course, he had no number to call her back on. When he answered the phone, he got her a place to live, food, clean clothing, housing, a waitress trainee job at a truck stop. Tom Collins saved her life. I investigated the best homeless shelters I could find. The Barrett House in Albuquerque had every ingredient that I wanted. How to help women and empower them to get out of a terrible situation, because most women there are battered. They probably don't even have their birth certificates. You know, it's a bad deal. I wanted to help people.
We are out of time, but I thank you so much. This has been an outstanding interview, and keep up the good work, my good man. Thank you so much for enlightening us here.
Thank you.
Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville.